Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby.
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Society places demands on our kids and on our teenagers and on our adult women who now believe that this is how I have to look and I've got to put in whatever effort is required to be there, and I'm going to be perpetually satisfied with my body because nature drives my body in precisely the opposite direction to society's ideal.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Most Tuesdays on the Happy Families podcast, we answer listener questions, and today one that's very close to our heart. We have 6 daughters, and while boys do struggle with this particular challenge, it very much in our society is a girl issue.
Well, you highlighted your struggles with your...
With my pectoral muscles, You're going to bring that up again? I can't believe that. For those of you who are new to the podcast and have no idea what Kylie's talking about, when I was a teenager, I was looking in the mirror one day, I was doing some flexing as teenage boys tend to do, and I noticed that my right pec was a different shape and size to my left pec. I got so worried about it, I made an appointment to go and see the doctor. The doctor laughed, thought I was very funny, and told me that was totally normal and not to worry about it, and just to do more push-ups and both sides will catch up to each other. That's not the question, though. The question is about girls and how they see themselves. Kylie, this one comes through from Kate.
She said, any advice on instilling body positivity in young girls? I have a 5-year-old daughter and she already talks about fat tummies and not wanting to be fat. I worry what this could lead to in years to come.
So there's a book called Beauty Sick. It's by a wonderful researcher at Northwestern University in the United States. Got a great reputation, that university. Her research is brilliant. It's called Beauty Sick. Her name is Renee Engeln. I recommend everyone read that book. I just think it's the best book on body image stuff of any book that I've ever seen. And in that book, she highlights that there is really just an abundance of research showing that even 5-year-old girls, well over 30% of them, are struggling with some aspect of their body. They already feel insecure about their body at 5. What Kate's saying in this email to us via podcast@happyfamilies.com.au is not altogether unusual, as sad as it is. I also found some Aussie research. This research comes from La Trobe University, the Child Body Image Development Study. And at La Trobe University, they found that 38% of 4-year-old girls in Australia are dissatisfied with their body.
Why is it so high?
Well, that's really what I think we should talk about for the rest of the podcast and what we can do about it. I think that it's so high for a few reasons. Number one, society's expectation. If you look at everything from Margot Robbie in the Barbie movie, if you look at any popular culture, you just don't see normal, and I'm using the word normal in inverted commas, you don't see normal body shapes represented. You turn on the news at night, you turn on the TV shows in the morning, it doesn't matter what media you consume, all you see is one body type for females. It's so hard to find quote unquote normal body types for females. Society's ideal, and I wrote about this in my book Misconnection. So if anyone has a tween or a teen girl and body image issues are coming up, I was astonished. I was absolutely astonished at the overwhelming number of girls who told me in my surveys and in my interviews with them that body image was the hardest thing in their lives, the thing that they worried about the most. So many of them were saying it. And it's not just them. You're sort of looking at me and shaking your head as I'm saying it, but when we were dating, I don't know if you remember this or not, we went on our first date. We were at Terrigal Beach and there was a charcoal chicken at Terrigal Beach. I said, let's go and have a picnic. That's what I've got planned for our first date. We're going to go and sit over at Terrigal Haven, sit on the grass, watch the water, watch the waves. It's a beautiful place. Let's go and get some charcoal chicken. So we've walked in, and do you remember what I ordered?
You ordered a whole chicken and some chips.
Yes.
Which I thought was for both of us.
Correct. And after I'd ordered the chicken, and these were big chickens, like these were size 20 chickens. They're not like the little ones that you buy from Woolworths these days that cost $12.
The bachelor's handbag.
This was a full-size chicken. You then looked at me as I said, what would you like? And you said, I'll just have a little bit of what you're having. And I said, no, you won't. That's my lunch. And so you had to order your own. And I don't know if you remember this conversation or not, but when we discussed it a little bit down the track, maybe we were even married and in our first year or two of marriage, and we were talking about that first date, and you told me that on previous dates, you just didn't eat. And you're not a superficial kind of, I need to make sure that I always look good kind of person. You always look wonderful, but you're not always sort of worrying about how you look. You look beautiful, you look presentable, and you go and get on with your day. My recollection of the conversation was that you said that when you went on dates, you didn't eat in front of your dates because you felt uncomfortable eating and you didn't want to look like you ate a lot of food. Whereas I'm eating a whole chicken and a bag of chips and you were like, I can eat whatever I want with this guy and he's not going to judge me at all. So there's this societal expectation that girls are going to look a certain way, eat a certain way. When I was doing parental guidance, I remember Ali Langdon would get into the studio at least an hour before me for hair and makeup because that's how long it took. And I'm thinking, what a waste of a life. How many other things could you do with that hour? Like, how many books could you read? How much exercise could you do? How much connection with other people who matter in your life could you be involved in? But, oh no, we have to look a certain way. So that's a long way of saying society places demands on our kids and on our teenagers and on our adult women who now believe that this is how I have to look and I've got to put in whatever effort is required to be there and I'm going to be perpetually satisfied with my body because nature drives my body in precisely the opposite direction to society's ideal.
But I'm an 18-year-old having those thought processes. This is a 5-year-old.
I remember when we were kids, my little sisters, I've got twin sisters, they're 4 years younger than me. And I remember, I've still got the photos. They would run around the backyard just wearing their swimming shorts or their bikini bottom kind of things, but with no tops. Because, little kids, you don't worry about dressing them fully. It's a hassle. I don't know why they did. They just didn't wear it. They were 4 years old, 3 years old.
In the backyard.
And they were in the backyard. But they had these, I call it a sticky outy tummy. Do you remember, little kids are not worried about this stuff. But the research shows that by the time they're 4 or 5, about a third of them are. Maybe even up to a half of them by the time they're 5, 6, 7. And it's happening because of society expectations. And it's also happening because this is something else that I discovered when I was writing Misconnection. There's a relationship between how you look and how popular you are at school.
But at 5?
Not so much at 5, but certainly as we move into the tween and teen years.
Definitely, and I expect that.
But there is absolutely...
because of what society does.
There is a push down.
I'm really reeling in the fact that a 5-year-old's even conscious.
I'm going to tell you a couple of other reasons. You said, why is this happening? Number one, I'm saying society. Number two, I'm actually going to say it comes back to us as parents. And it's a really hard thing to say. I'm not blaming and shaming parents. We often do this without being aware of it. But we make a big deal, oh, you look so pretty in that. Oh, what are you wearing that for? That doesn't look very nice at all. Or we look in the mirror and we say, oh my goodness, my thighs. I can't believe what's happening to me. I'm getting so old. Look at these wrinkles. Or we catch up with friends and what's the first thing we say when we see friends that we haven't seen in a while? You look great. Or, wow, you've lost weight. Or, we've got to stop talking about people's physical appearance when we meet them. When we see them, just say, it's so good to see you. I've missed you. Tell me what you've been up to. Leave the physical comments out of the conversation because our kids hear every single physical comment that we make about ourselves, about them, or about our friends, and they internalize that. They get this message that how I look matters. So the first thing is societal expectation, media. Second thing, it comes from their friends, their peer groups, even at younger ages. And third, it comes from us and what we're saying, even though we don't mean it, even though we're well-intentioned, even though we have no idea that we're doing it. And I would also add, when we make comments about what they're eating and how it's going to affect them, if we are not very, very careful, research shows really clearly that kids who are told at the age of sort of 7, 8, 9 that they're looking a little bit chubby, they are significantly more likely to have an eating challenge and a weight problem, to be overweight and or obese by the time they're in their late teens, early 20s. Like, the research on this topic is robust and there is a lot of it.
So Kate really wants some answers
I know.
on how she can help her 5-year-old, because any parent who's dealing with this with a young child inevitably is looking to the future and thinking, this is not going to go well if I don't kind of curb this now.
I want to very gently ask you to share an experience that one of our kids had a little while ago. She was a little bit older than this 5-year-old, but I think that it very much applies.
So some time ago, one of our daughters came home from school and she literally fell into my arms sobbing.
Yeah.
And her big sister had picked her up and she looked at me and she was like, I don't know what just happened. So I took her aside and I spent some time with her and I kind of said, it looks like you've had a really, really hard day. And she said, yeah. She said there was a boy at school and she used the word fat shamed me. And I said, what do you mean? And so she proceeded to tell me what he had said about her. And she was just heartbroken. I wanted to know who this boy was, whether he was a friend of hers, whether or not she associated with him normally. Would she go to him for advice? Would she spend time with him in any other setting? And she acknowledged that, number one, he was in a different grade. He wasn't a friend. He wasn't somebody that she would talk to ever. And I just acknowledged to her, then if he's not a person that you would go to if you needed advice or you needed, kind of help with something, why would you be concerned by what he thinks about you?
Yeah, if you're not going to go to them for advice, why would you go to them for criticism? That kind of idea.
Why would you put so much power on what he thinks?
And yet it still affects our kids, doesn't it?
Just devastating.
I remember having a conversation with her. I mean, she just went to bed and cried for hours and hours. It really, really affected her.
Told us she didn't want to go back to school.
Never want to go back to that school again. I feel awful. And I still remember sitting with her and saying, there was a comment about her thighs. Let's just think about your thighs for a second. What do they say about you as a person? And she said that I'm fat. And I said, well, that may or may not be true. But even if it said that, what does that say about you as a person? And she said, I don't know what you mean. I said, well, what does it say about who you are? Like, what does it say about what kind of friend you are? And she looked at me strangely and I said, what do your thighs say about what kind of friend you are or what kind of friend you can be? And she kind of pulled a funny face and said, nothing. I said, that's right. And what does it say about your academic potential? What do your thighs tell you about your academic potential? And she was like, nothing. I said, what do they say about, and I sort of rattled off a range of different things where the quality or size of her thighs mean nothing at all to the rest of her life. I said, okay, so what do they say about your value as a person? What do your thighs say about how much I love you? And she just burst into tears. She's like, nothing. And I said, I love you. I don't care how big your thighs are or how little your thighs are. It's irrelevant. And then I brought you into the conversation. I said, do you think that I would love Mum more if her thighs were different to what they are right now? And she looked at me strangely and she's like, no. I'm like, no, I wouldn't. I love Mum because she's Mum. I didn't marry Mum for her thighs. Like one way or the other, I married you for you, not for your thighs. And we had this conversation, and I think that between your conversation and my conversation, she sort of started to work through it and process it and realize the stuff that matters. If you've got a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a teenager who's struggling with body image, number one, if you wouldn't go to the person who's made a critical comment about you for advice, why would you go to them for criticism? But even if it's if you're carrying a mirror with you everywhere you go, on your inside, that is, everywhere you go, you're seeing yourself that way, our kids need to know that they've got to stop taking criticism from themselves. They wouldn't speak like that about their friends. They shouldn't speak like that about themselves. And their thighs or their belly say nothing about their value as a person or their potential as a person. I think those couple of conversations are just so important for our kids.
I remember being in a class when I was a teenager and the teacher pulled out a $20 bill. Brand new, clean,
Crisp.
Beautiful, crisp, before plastic.
Yeah. Oh, so they had that beautiful smell.
It was a paper note.
So people who are young, you may not know this, but money used to actually be paper before it became the plastic stuff we've got. My mum used to say, back in those days, my mum has always had a thing for money, and she used to say, if I ever die, just get a couple of $100 notes.
And stick them over my nose.
Stick them over my nose, and I'll come back to life for sure. The smell of money back in the 80s. Yeah.
It had such a good smell.
Anyway,
there's a beautiful clean note, and he asked us how much this note was worth. And we all said $20. And he then proceeded to completely smush it into a ball. It was completely gone, like couldn't see it. It was hidden in his fist.
Yep, and all scrunched up. Right?
All scrunched up. And then he even dropped it on the floor and he gave it a good stomp to make sure it was really, really crunched. And he pulled it up and he showed the class and he unraveled it so we could see it again. It's no longer nice and clean, is it? It's all like completely creased. And he asked us how much it was worth now.
Yeah, right.
And we kind of said $20.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different to what we first saw. and yet its value hasn't changed. And it was such a powerful kind of visual
great
for
object
us
lesson.
as teenagers to see that regardless of what we look like, our physical being doesn't change our innate worth. And if we can instill that in our children, wow.
And we've got to do it intentionally and explicitly. They've got to know we love you no matter what, and your thighs or your belly or your face or whatever it is, got nothing to do. Nothing to do with your value.
I think the other thing is if all we ever focus on is what everybody sees, then we're actually quite shallow in what we can accomplish, because what we actually need to be teaching our kids is to understand and give thanks for what their bodies can do.
We're out of time, but I want to share 2 more quick ideas, maybe 3 more quick ideas. No, I'm going to summarize everything we've talked about into a really quick snapshot. Number 1, who is this person to you? Would you go to them for advice? If not, don't take criticism. Number 2, stop walking around with the mirror inside you. Number 3, as parents, we've got to watch our words to our children, to ourselves, and to our friends. Number 4, you just said it. Focus with your kids not on how they look, but what they can do. Stop worrying about what your body looks like and start focusing on what it can do, what it does. Next, the worthiness thing. What's it say about you, about your potential, about your capacity, about your happiness, about your academic or friendship or whatever it is? And last but not least, I want to say a quick word about Photoshop and the media literacy workshops and comments that we see quite often on this topic. People make a really big deal about it, not usually with 5-year-olds, but certainly with older kids. You've just got to teach them to be literate, media literate, so that they know that it's photoshopped and they know that they've got the best hairdressers and the best makeup artists and they've got the best wardrobe designers and everything's designed so that you look a certain way. I'm going to actually suggest that the research does not support that conversation.
No, because I just want the best hairdressers and the best wardrobe guys
it's
to
still
do it to me.
aspirational. It's still aspirational and you're still focusing on looks. It's much better to just let it go, stop making a big deal about it and focus on other things.
One more quick thing, because I forgot.
Yep.
I have an absolutely favourite children's book that we were gifted when our children were very, very young.
Yeah, probably 3 or 4
It
or
is
5.
completely dog-eared. It's got some ripped pages with sellotape on them, but it is just such a beautiful book, especially for a 5-year-old. It's called I Like Myself by Karen Beaumont, and it just is a delightful, hilarious book about all of the possibilities. We've got, horns protruding from our nose. We've got purple polka dots. We've got massive blue lips. We've got, stripy hair. We've got spikes running down our back. All of these different things, which are obviously completely convoluted and not true at all. But it just helps us to recognize that we can like ourselves no matter what, because it's what our bodies can do, not what our bodies look like.
Okay, we really hope that this has been a useful conversation. I've loved it. I think that it's been a really important discussion. Body image issues, a whole lot of solutions, and my book, Misconnection, Why Your Teenage Daughter Hates You, Expects the World and Needs to Talk, has an incredible chapter on all of this kind of content. It may be helpful for you. Misconnection. It's available wherever you buy your books and at happyfamilies.com.au. Also check out Beauty Sick. Beauty Sick by Renee Engeln. Phenomenal. One of my all-time favourite books. I would put it literally in my top 10 favourite books of all time. Just brilliant stuff. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rollin from Bridge Media with Craig Bruce, our executive producer. For more information about making your family happier, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.